Hi, everybody. Welcome back to What We're Watching, a podcast to keep your eye on. My name is Reese Potter,
And I'm Ava Potter.
and we are, as always, your lovely hosts for this week's episode. We are coming to you with episode 17, I think. How exciting! So we have only about three or four more episodes left in this season, which we are so cinty about because this first season has been so much fun. But of course, we will, as always, be back. There's always stuff going on, of course. I mean,
Always stuff to
obvi.
watch.
Yes. So today we have a pretty cool episode. We're going to discuss some really cool things, and we have a bit of a surprise for you guys later too that we are so excited for. The entire time that this is coming into like fruition, I was just like all giddy and excited and just like couldn't wipe the smile off my face. So I really hope that you guys are excited. I'm not going to tell you just yet, but when we get there, you will know. Yes. Okay, so today our topic that we wanted to talk about is stop motion and stop motion animation. And we just kind of wanted to bring some light to this topic because there's a super cool movie that's coming out this October, a new stop motion animated film called Wildwood that looks literally so fun and so cool. And I know that stop motion animation is a huge hit. A lot of people may not even really realize that some of their favorite films are stop motion animation because they just don't think of everything like that. I think like Chicken Run and Wallace and Gromit are like a popular one that people automatically think of. A lot
Mhm.
of Tim Burton ones people think of, but some people may not think of is like Wes Anderson's like Fantastic Mr. Fox and Isle of Dogs and things like that. So I think it's a really cool, widely used way to animate films. And it's so cool how we have so many of these types of films using this, yet it to me seems like one of the hardest animation styles that there are. I mean, obviously we know I know little to nothing about animation, but I mean, with how much detail they have to put in, it just seems like it would be the most difficult one.
There's so many moving parts of each scene that, I can think of like on my own, like in my own head, whenever I think of like a scene from Coraline, I'll think of, okay, so she moves from here to there and her arm swings from this way, that way. But then there's so many other things like eyes blinking, the wind moving in the room, like the air and the her shadow and the like her feet walk. Like there's so many small things like that that you don't think about,
Right.
but they have
Yeah.
to include that in every single scene and it's small snippets every time they do it. Like
Yeah.
it's so
I feel
cool.
like there's also like I love seeing animated films. I feel like are kind of underrated because a lot of people just chalk them up to being like kids movies, but I feel like it's so cool to see the different types of animation too. Like even within this last year, we had like your anime style kind of with like K-pop Demon Hunters. And then on top of that, we had Flow, which was a really interesting, like I'm not exactly sure what animation style that was, but it's
Mhm.
this like silent film of sorts about this cat. Oh my gosh.
A little comic booky, but like
Yeah, it's kind
not
of it's very
fully.
like it's drawn type style. And then
Hmm.
of course, our favorite, the Spider-Verse, like
Hmm.
hello peak animation. Like literally that is crazy to me because the Spider-Verse morphs different styles of animation together in one scene too, which I think is absolutely wicked. I would love to see if within this next film they use stop motion because they say that they take so long because they use so many different animation styles that I wonder if that they'll dip into a little bit of stop motion animation. So, but yeah, and I think it's super cool to see all these different kinds of animation and how each kind plays a significant part in the story that they're telling. I think a lot of times when you think of stop motion, you think of things like Coraline, Paranorman, Monster House, Nightmare Before Christmas. A lot of these kind of eerie, creepy vibes, unsettling vibes, I think. And I like how those can be portrayed with the use of these like clay doll-like figurines. I think it kind of adds to that element within the stories.
I just love these movies. These type of movies are, I have probably seen Coraline so many times, and every time I watch a video of someone explaining, you know, the background of how they moved from this point to this point. And the way that they did the Coraline animation is their faces were like split in half, like across the mouth, like this. And they would replace the bottom half anytime like they would talk. So like they
Mm,
made a whole lot of like different kinds of just like the bottom half of their face to be able to get those fun scenes, especially with Coraline's other father and his mouth moves so much like side to side. Um, that type of like, split face was like
feature, yeah.
made it easier for them to be able to manipulate that a little bit.
Yeah, that's super cool. I guess we should explain what stop motion is if there's any crazy people out there that don't know what stop motion is. I actually learned today in the lab talking to Dana, who is a lab tech where I work. He had no idea what stop motion animation was. So, for anybody out there that is unfamiliar with stop motion is a type of animation that is uses inanimate objects and animates them by moving them small, tiny increments and taking individual photographic frames so that they can be slowly manipulated into movement. So think of like if you were to draw, in like a book or something,
The
you
flip
draw
book.
a little stick figure and he's moving up higher and higher each time because he's jumping. And then when you flip through it, it creates a motion. That's similar to stop motion. So a lot of times that what are used are like clay figurines, but there's a bunch of other like mediums that can be used for them as well. And it's actually one of the oldest film or animated styles on film, which I think is super cool. One of the earliest records of stop motion animation dates way back to the 1800s, like the 1890s. And then I from there until about the 1920s, it was only used in shorts. But after the 1920s, we got like full length films, which I think is so cool. I mean, to think that you think of how much work they have to put in to slowly manipulate something within maybe a 20 frames a minute or something like that, probably more when you really think about it, all the moving parts, like you said, to make that then a hour and a half to 2 hour long feature film is mind-boggling. The attention to detail that these animators have to have and that the puppeteers have to have is literally insane to me. I mean, it has to take somebody who is super precise and I think of like the storyboarding that probably goes along with creating these films too. It has to be like really specific. Thinking
Mhm.
of like similar to probably a comic book where you're drawing out every clip and every animation that they're having to draw out every single moment and be like, okay, well, will it make more sense to place this arm here, place this arm here? Will it make sense to make them blink here or move their hair this way? Like, are we simulating the wind is blowing? Do we need to move the trees and their hair and their clothing this way? It's all such tiny little details that when you think about it, you're like, how in the world does somebody do that? Right?
There's when you go into not just thinking about like the characters too, when you think about the setting of each of the movies too, I know like box trolls, that whole, main setting that they're in, there's so many details in that. When you think about Coraline and in her house and then the other house and the garden and the Pink Palace and all of those, you know, different moving parts too. There's so many moving parts within the setting and within each character. And I watched one of the videos that Laika had on their Instagram, and it was showing the like kind of background into how they animated the box trolls that would go back into their boxes pretty quickly, or like interchangeably. And they had people in real life kind of act that out with boxes on them so they could see what the actual movement would be. So when they animated it, it made more sense, or when they moved and took those individual photos, it made more sense of naturally how that would actually move instead of just kind of going with the flow and kind of guessing how it would move. And it
Yeah,
ended up becoming like choppy. It flowed and it made sense.
that's yeah. It's such a cool way and a cool medium to see. And I'm obsessed with the way that this is played out and how much detail there is. And I just think that it would be so cool to be able to like talk to somebody who works on these films and kind of pick their brain about how they put all this detail in and what it takes. And, you know, I think we should do that. Ava,
I
do you
think we
want to do
should.
that? Yeah. So surprise! We have a special guest on today's episode of what we're watching. Please join us in welcoming our guest, the Academy Award nominated stop motion animator and the lead animator at Laika, Mr. Brad Schiff. Welcome, Mr. Brad Schiff. Brad, if you would like to take it away, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Hi, everybody. I'm Brad Schiff. I'm the head of animation at Laika Studios in Portland, Oregon, and we specialize in stop motion feature animation animated films.
That's so awesome. How did you get into this? Like, where in your like schooling did you decide that this is where you wanted to be?
I was I was kind of dead-ended in school in um, Missouri. I went to be an art major, and my freshman year, my teacher, figure drawing teacher, pulled me aside and recommended I drop his class. And my stuff wasn't the best in the class, but it was far from the worst in the class. And like maybe he was just trying to light a fire under my butt at that particular time, but that was the wrong kind of motivation for
Totally.
me
Yeah.
that time in my life. So I became really self-conscious about my drawing ability and didn't want to have anything to do with art anymore. And every semester it seemed like I switched my major. I went from, art to psychology
Oh,
to
wow.
sociology to business. And I just really went into a funk after like 2.5 years of school. And it was like, I don't know what I want to do with my life, but graduating with a business degree doesn't feel right to me.
Totally.
So meanwhile, like my best buddy from high school was going to school down in Tampa, Florida, and he couldn't really draw either, but he was making like every time we go home for the holidays, he had made these cool animated films. So I transferred schools, long story short, I transferred schools. I discovered that I could sculpt
Oh, cool.
and I started doing stop motion films. And because my stuff looked cool, people kind of liked them. And it really felt like somebody, I also went from like a 2.4 student to a 4.0 student.
So you found your
Um,
calling for sure.
yeah, and it was as if somebody like grabbed me by the shoulders and pointed me in a direction and said, just keep walking that way.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's really cool. Ava, do you want to go ahead and start with the questions?
Yeah. So I'll go ahead and move into like our big chunk of questions that we have that kind of go into what you do in a typical day, your creative process, and then talk a little bit about Wildwood because the anticipation for that is getting big. But I'll go ahead and start with that first question. So what's the creative process kind of look like when you're starting a new project? And what kind of scenes do you like to start with? Do you start with ones that are a little bit smaller, or do you like to jump right into the deep end with those bigger scenes?
Okay, I'll take that. That's a big question with many parts. But when we start these movies, it takes a village to make these
Hmm.
films. It takes a lot of people, and there's a lot of pre-production that happens before we even, hit start shooting the animation, hit the stage of shooting animation. So, the first thing we do is there's a script, and typically before we see it, they've storyboarded. They start working on storyboards, and they put together what's called an animatic, which is the film with temp voices in storyboard form. So you're able to see what the flow of the movie and whatnot. And then they lock the animatic. And once that's locked, we start to break down the movie. And it's like trying to figure out how many, meanwhile, somebody else is working on how many puppets there are, how many sets there are, what the locations are. But we start to break down what the demands of the animation will be. Um, the complexity of certain scenes, what do we want to be stop motion, what do we want to be CG, what's going to be practical, what'll be VFX after the fact. So everybody kind of goes away and starts building things. Puppet department's building puppets. The set department's building.
Oh, I think
Oh
we
no, we
lost
might have
you.
lost you. Oh no. Mhm. You can try removing him and sending him a message.
Um, okay, I don't know if you can hear us, Brad. I'll also text you, but I'm gonna try to remove you. Oh,
Oh,
wait.
wait.
All right, where did I get to?
You were just about to say, the people all break apart. You know, the set designers are designing the sets. That's where we got you.
Okay.
Yeah.
So so every department goes away and they build their stuff. Meanwhile, um, my team, the animation team, we're the beneficiaries of everything that everybody makes, right? We get to play with the bring the puppets to life on the practical sets. But we also have to make sure that they're going to perform the way they need to perform. So my team and I work closely with the puppet department to make sure that, they can move every way that we're going to need them to move, that the costumes allow movement. So we test everything along the way. There's lots of testing. And then we're also developing the characters. So we're pulling reference on how do we want the characters to behave? How do we want them to perform? Do they have any, you know, little quirks or ticks that we want them to carry on throughout the movie? Because, really we have a team on Wildwood. It was the biggest team we've ever had. We had a team of 40 animators.
Wow.
But the goal is, you have 40, everybody has an individual style, even though we have a studio style. So you try to set the roadmap up for everybody to be able to animate the puppets in a particular way. So by the end of the day, when the movie's finished, it really feels like it was made by one set of hands as opposed to 40 sets of hands.
Yeah. So do you guys kind of, as each animator, split up like to certain characters to each people, or different things like that? Or are you guys all working on certain scenes together? You take a scene, somebody else takes a scene. How do you kind of divide up that work between each other?
Casting's a big part of the movie. It's sort of because every animator has their strengths, and their skill set that they're really good at. Some because they're really actors, they're actors. They just act through these inanimate objects or the inanimate puppets. So, some animators are really good at dramatic, emotional scenes, while others may be good at comedic scenes, when others are, good at action scenes. So we try to really put animators into scenes and sequences and characters that cater to their strengths as artists.
Yeah. And you
Um,
mentioned something earlier, sorry to cut you off. Do you
no, it's okay.
guys do the voice acting prior to you guys start animating?
Well, I kind of skipped over that. So when we do the animatic with the temp track, meanwhile, while everybody's building stuff, they're also working with a casting director that's casting the movie. So then they'll record the voices and replace all the temp track with the real voices.
That makes sense.
So once we get to animating, we're animating to the proper actors.
Awesome. Cool.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
That's so cool.
Yeah. I think, and the second part of your question was, what do you start with?
Mm-hmm.
And it's really dependent on what's built first.
Mm.
True.
So,
Yes.
it's what puppets do we have? What puppets have come out first, and it's usually the main character. Um, because the main character is in the whole, typically whether it's Coraline or Paranorman or Box Trolls, Kubo, the main character is in the whole movie, right? So we'll have like 20 some odd puppets of that main character. But only one comes out first. So there's a ramp up. So we'll start with one or two animators, and then the next month another couple will start, and then the next month. So because you have to build the assets to be able to have them, have the animators have things to actually animate.
Yeah. That's
Um,
awesome.
but we do try to do not first, but because we really, as much as we do character development testing, a lot of it also happens on the fly when we start to shoot, and you learn things about the puppets because it's never really enough time for development on the front end as much as we would like it to be. So we wind up developing as we go. Um, but you want to really do the harder stuff in the beginning of the movie than leaving it to the end because our films are a fusion of stop motion and CGs. We fuse old school craft with cutting edge modern day
Right.
technology.
Yeah,
So it's we don't want to leave all the hard stuff for VFX at the end.
totally.
Yeah.
Yeah. Alrighty. I'll hop into that next question. So, what's a typical day kind of look to you whenever you go into the studio and get things rolling?
For me, um, like in the heat of production, you know,
Yes.
heat of production, we get in. I get in early, like before the day starts. I usually get in like an hour early just to kind of go over emails because the days are so slammed. You really don't get a chance to check out emails during the day. Um, Look at the call sheet, see what shots are coming up for the day, review the things that we're going to be looking at in editorial. So I will sit in editorial for most of the day with the director and our editor when we go over shots, we go over blocks and rehearsals and briefing animators on those things, and then ultimately on their hero animation. And to me, that's my favorite part of the process. It's the most creative. I think, we're solving problems. We're talking about performance. We're talking about, is this work? Does this work? What do we want to do instead of this? Um, so it's a lot of time spent in editorial briefing animators um, on their performances that they're going to be creating on set. I'm in editorial, so it frees the director up. Like if an animator has a question on set, I can go out on the set and answer those questions. So the director's free to do all the other stuff that he or she has to do. Um, and then a lot of set visits, visiting animators on set, making sure everything's going well, progress checks to make sure that they're hitting all the notes that they were supposed to hit in editorial, sitting in meetings about puppets, about sets, sets that are we have a new set that's coming out, so we have these carcass meetings, we call them, and everybody gets together and talks about you know where where the animator is going to stand to animate, make sure that they have access, where all the lights are going to be, um, where it's going to be situated on the stage that we have. So lots of meetings, lots of editorial, um, and before you know it, the day's over and you don't know what you did with the day.
I'm sure it flies by with how
Yeah,
much work you're
Yeah.
doing.
Yeah, it definitely feels like it's a pretty like fast moving day, but slow motion animation.
that's exactly right. It's like the days fly by, but like this much happens in a day.
Right. You're like, this day felt like it went by so fast, but we did this much of the film today.
Yeah, like we joke it's a terrible way to make a movie. It's like the pace is glacial. You know,
Right.
it's
So,
it's
I
so
mean, how
slow.
long does it typically take you to make a full-length movie then?
Typically, they take 2.5 years. Well, the actual animation has typically taken 2.5 years.
Wow.
This one was 5.5.
Wow. So the
Wow.
Wildwood has definitely been a love child for quite some time.
Wildwood has been a beast.
That's
It's a
awesome.
it's a movie that we've had in development for a long time, and Travis Knight, our owner of the company and the director of Wildwood, he has sort of been waiting for the time where he felt like we were ready to make this movie.
Yeah.
It's so big. It's really
Oh, I'm so
you know
excited.
epically big in every way. Um, but he felt now was the time that we could make it, and we made it. But it was tough. It
Yeah.
was
Yeah.
it's been a tough ride, but fun. It's going to be absolutely beautiful.
Oh yeah, we're both very excited for it.
Yeah,
So.
I'm really excited because this type of style of animation has always been one of my favorites. I am a huge Coraline fan. I
Mm.
love Coraline so much. Um, but we'll kind of go into Wildwood since we kind of started talking about it a little bit already. So what can you tell us about the adventure of Wildwood and Prue's journey of getting her little brother back?
I mean, I can't say a lot about the story yet.
Right, of course,
I'm
of
really
course.
only privy to talk about, the what's
What's in
been
the
seen in the
trailer?
trailers thus far. But the story really revolves around 13-year-old Prue McKeel, who is tasked with watching her brother. And, she's a typical teenager, thinks she knows more than she does, and feels like she's older than she is. And she winds up taking him out, and he gets taken away by a murder of crows into the forest, and she has to overcome her fears and goes into a fantastical world of talking animals, um, into some, yeah, and I can't say a whole lot.
Oh, I'm so excited.
Um, but to rescue her brother, really the core of the film is how far would you go for those you love?
Yeah, that's
Mm.
Um,
awesome. I
it's
love
a
I think it's such a cool way to, it's like an epic, it's this long deep journey that I'm sure will unpack many things, and as a sibling, I'm excited to see, I can relate to prove the fact that I would go literally to the ends of the earth for my sisters, so that's
yeah.
awesome. I think I'm really excited for it. We've said that so many times, but
I'm so excited. Since you've worked on so many different kind of stop motion films like Coraline, Box Trolls, Kubo and the Two Strings, Paranorman, being a part of movies that have such large, passionate like fan bases and audiences, what's it like to try and exceed like audience expectations, especially for Wildwood story that's been in the works for so long?
I think, it's personally, I think from the day I started doing stop motion, I always just felt that there was more potential in the medium than was being done. Um, and it's exactly what we do here at Leica, is just trying to push what's possible in this art form. And, using technology that we have at our disposal today, we use digital cameras. So we have what's called frame grabbers. So you can, every time you take a frame on the camera, you can see it on a computer. So when you get to frame 10, you can see your previous 10 frames and your live frame. So you can see exactly what you're doing and where you are. So, back in the day, they never used to have any of that stuff, which is why you used to have like everything kind of strobed and was stuttered a little bit. And
sure.
now the only reason to do that would be stylistic choice. The animators are so talented and so good. We can, the performances are so clean, and nuanced that, that's why some people say it doesn't look like stop motion. I'm like,
Right.
what does that mean? It's funny because we're in the midst of an evolution of an art form,
Right.
you know.
Well, I feel like a lot of people, they may like not fully realize that some of their favorite films are stop motion just because, that's a whole different type of animation. I mean, like I was telling Ava earlier, I talked to somebody today who had no idea what stop motion even was, and I'm like, "Oh, I
Right.
guarantee you've seen a stop
I bet
motion
you've
film."
seen
Yeah,
one.
so that's super cool.
Yeah, but it's like, we're always trying to push what's possible, right? And everything is always in service of the story.
Totally.
Um,
Yeah.
on this film, I think this film is probably closest to Kubo, which is the other movie that Travis had directed, where the performances were really, a lot of really deep, heavy, emotional performances.
Mhm.
Um, Wildwood is that way. Puppets are going to make people cry. The
Oh,
performances are really so emotional and beautiful and, nuanced. It's People will never have seen stop motion performances the likes that you will on Wildwood.
yeah. That kind of reminds me. I know a lot of people, myself too. Like Isle of Dogs always makes me cry
Mm.
too. Like I think it's when you can allow yourself to let animation and stop motion animation puppets make you feel things that, and see connect to those emotions that like real humans would give too. I think it's like an applaud to the animators for being able to do that. So that's awesome.
Yeah, they're so, it's funny. I think of what like inspired me when I started, and it was like Ray Harryhausen, like Clash of the Titans, or
Yeah.
the Rankin and Bass Christmas specials. And if you go back and you look at that stuff it's pretty, while it was cutting edge for its time, it's
Right.
rough and ropey today. And then we've taken this art form to this level that we're doing, but now we've got, you know, this next generation coming out of school who have been inspired by the stuff that we've been doing over the last 20 years. And they come straight out of school with this incredible talent. It's like that, they animate these puppets, and some of it, some of the things just look like live action. It's
That's
it's
awesome.
really mind blowing, and I get goosebumps geeking out.
Oh,
Like
I bet.
where are they going to take the
Right.
art form?
Yeah, getting
It's really
inspiration from
exciting.
people who see you as a role model is like unreal, I bet.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's a whole weird thing too.
Right.
I
That's
still
awesome.
fancy myself a 15-year-old most of the time.
Right, a little bit of imposter syndrome in there,
Yeah,
like
that never
me.
goes away.
Yeah. That's awesome.
And then kind of more into like we were talking about the emotions that these puppets can make you feel and how these type of films have so many moving parts with like the different animals and the trees and the leaves and the moving wind. How do you ensure like you can capture all of that like as a part of a story like the animators? How can we ensure that they capture all of those different moving parts?
Um, you know, well, we develop so much, and we work with all the departments to make sure, because there's no simulation like
Hmm.
there is in CG, like the hair has to be wired and armatured to be able to move the hair. The cloth that they're wearing has to have wire or foil in it so you can move it. So every frame, an animator is moving a piece of hair, like not just the puppet, but the hair on the puppet, the cloth on the puppet, the leaves and that they're running through the forest, pushing out of the way. So everything is built in a way that it can animate. So the animator knows, we all know what the expectation is, and that's that it's going to be hard.
Yeah.
Uh,
Hmm.
and and everybody knows what their responsibilities are, and that's trying to move everything that you can see as beautifully as you can.
Have you ever gotten to a scene that you were trying to, animate and you realized that you were going to have to do CGI for something or do a type of different type of effect to get what you were trying to achieve?
Mm. Well, a lot of that is decided like during the breakdown meetings. You know, we usually have a pretty good idea of what we can do and what we can't, and we try to do as much practically as we can. Um, Strangely enough, we've had stuff that we thought we could do in CG that they've struggled with that we
Really?
wound up
That's
having to do practically. We had to do that on this film a couple of times, which is really kind of cool.
that's
Um, but occasionally that happens, but more often than not, the plan is pretty tight and pretty solid.
yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, I have a bit of a fun question for you.
Okay.
If you could take any film that's not stop motion and remake it into stop motion, what film would you choose?
Um, it's funny. I haven't even seen it.
Okay.
I haven't even seen it, but the new Toy Story,
Oh, yeah.
which is supposed to be about tech toys taking the place of real
Real
toys.
toys, right.
Yep.
I would do the real toys. Like I would do Woody and Buzz as stop-mo puppets and do the rest of it computer.
Yeah, like mix medias a little
Mix it.
bit.
That'd be
And
really
it
Yeah,
cool.
I just think it's a funny concept to do that that story made
right.
made by the computer.
Yeah.
It's just
And
Yeah.
I
kind of
love
like
I
kind of
love
silly.
when films mix animation medias. Like some of our favorite films are like the Into and Across the Spider-Verse films, which are
Oh
like
yeah.
big ones of mixing different type of animation media. And so I think seeing something that's digital and stop motion would be super super cool.
Really
Yeah, I
cool.
think that would be cool.
Yeah. Okay. And then last question. Outside of, I mean, maybe it's not, but I feel like Wildwood, based on how you've talked, might be one of your favorites that you've done. What is another one that you would say was one of your favorites that you've worked on?
Kubo and the
Kubo.
Tooth
Kubo is
Fairy.
awesome.
Yeah, I love Kubo so much. I think just personally it resonated with, stylistically with my personal, you know, um uh likes, it was a heavy story. It was a little more adult, which I liked.
Yeah.
It had action, it had comedy, it had emotion. Um, it really sat well with me. I love the way the performances were. I think just, I think I was most proud of that film. I think by the time we hit Kubo, um, the continuity of the animation style was the most consistent of any of the films that we had done
Sure, totally.
to that point. Um, and man, it was like the giant skeleton was 16 feet tall. It had a 19-foot wingspan. And it reminded me um, when I was a kid, my grandfather lived in New Orleans and I used to go spend my summers down there. And he was an artist and he would take me to his like buddy's shop who built Mardi Gras floats. And they would
Oh,
have like these
cool.
big floats with these big heads. And it was always just seemed like bigger than life. And I remember when I walked onto set for the first time and saw that giant skeleton, I was like, oh my gosh, like we are making motion pictures,
Yeah.
that.
Yes.
Because it's like stop motion, you're historically like limited to the tabletop. It's
Right.
like I worked on a bunch of television shows and commercials, and the feature films are just a bigger version of that, but still kind of tabletop, which is why we utilize the computer so much now is to, set extensions and whatnot to make the world bigger and CG characters so we can have more, have more people in the, populate the world. But this was the first time that you know, production really encouraged us to go for it and make
Yeah,
this
push
big. So
that
instead
boundary a
of
little bit.
instead of comping the puppets onto a smaller version of the skeleton, they said just make it big and we'll just have the regular size puppets running on a regular size skeleton, which just happened to be that big. And it was like, oh my gosh, I remember just having a real like kid moment looking at that.
That's incredible.
I
That's
think
so cool.
Kubo was the first one that I'd watched, like that I remember of being stop motion, that I like fully opened the doors to being like, wow, wait, I really like this type of animation. And then I
Totally.
watched Box Trolls and then I finally watched Coraline and I was like, yeah, this is awesome.
That's funny. That's a funny order to watch those films in.
Yeah, that's
I remember
awesome.
going to Redbox and renting Kubo and the Two Strings. So
Red box.
If you want to nerd out sometime watch them in order and just kind of like pay attention to like the
Oh,
animation
cool.
and just like
Yeah.
the evolution of like
evolution paths.
of how much better the animation has gotten in each one.
And
It's
then
kind of
it
a
can be a whole marathon and we can finish it off with Wildwood, right?
yeah, there you go.
Yeah.
Yes.
All right. Well, thank you so much for coming on.
You're
Honestly,
very
Thank
this
welcome.
is
you.
more than we
You're
could have
very
ever
welcome.
expected, and I'm so grateful that we were able to do this. Go ahead, promote yourself, let the people know where they can find you and when they can go see Wildwood and everything like that.
Uh, I'm Brad Schiff. I'm on Instagram, Brad Schiff at whatever, Instagram.com. Uh, Go see Wildwood October 23rd in theater near you. I do not think you will be disappointed.
Oh, thank you again. Thank you
Thank you
so, so
so
much.
much.
Absolutely.
Awesome. Thank you, Brad.
You're welcome.
Holy smokes, guys. That was insane and so, so cool. I hope you guys are as geeked as we are right now because that was like the best experience we could have had on this episode. So, again, we want to say thank you to Mr. Brad Schiff for joining us on this episode. And we hope you guys enjoyed this deep dive into some stop motion animation. Please make sure you write down on your calendars on October 23rd, Wildwood is coming out in your theaters to see this amazing film. And I'm so excited. And we will all watch it together. And don't worry, there will be a review for that one. All right, guys, we love you. Hope you have a wonderful rest of your week. Keep watching what you're watching. Bye.